Name of the book is R.D. Burman The Man, the Music, Chapter 12, The Film of the Millennium and the Aftermath. Dead Ember. Thematically, it's gravely flawed attempt. An imitation Western, neither here nor there, were some of the critical responses that welcomed the film. The actor, originally chosen to essay the villain, had refused the project as he was busy with another. The director was being sued by actor producer Joginder for allegedly having copied the theme from his film Bindiya or Banduk from 1973. Actor McMahon grumbled to the director about the length of his role in the final edited version, considering all the work he had put in. The film took almost 2.5 years to complete and went rupees 3 lakh over budget. Upon its release on 15th August 1975, the movie was termed a commercial disaster. It was a lucky to have landed a Filmfare Award for editing by M.S. Shinde. Over time, the film managed to win a few more laurels, the highest grossing Indian film ever for one, running for over 5 years at Minerva, the largest cinema hall in Mumbai. This was the first movie to release a disc containing its dialogues alone, in addition to the hundreds of thousands of music records released by Polydor that had already been sold. Ramesh Sippy's Sholay. The film of the millennium was the BBC's verdict, the greatest star cast ever assembled, the posters say, till date. The greatest story ever told, the tagline claimed. The greatest story ever told. True, if one considers the way the story has been told. Javed Akhtar, reminiscing with Nasreen Munni Kabir, agrees that Sholay was based on John Sturges' film The Magnificent Seven. The lead characters Viru and Jay, though may have been modeled on Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid 1969, Dharmendra's drunken scene atop the water tank had its predecessors in Kishore Kumar in Chacha Jinzabad and Anthony Quinn in The Secret of Santa Vittoria. The tossing of the coin to one's advantage was in all likelihood inspired from Henry Hathaway's Garden of Evil or Marlon Brando's One-Eyed Jacks. But what about the music? The audience might have expected deafening trumpets and 85 Ps band hammering away throughout the 188 minutes as a reminder that Sholay was an action movie. What was heard, however, was palpably different. The concept of songs in movies is peculiar to this part of the subcontinent. Songs do not add character to cinema and, as per classical definitions, distract from cinematic expression unless, of course, one is talking of a musical. It is the quality of the background music or its absence that underlines the character of the film rather than the songs. Sholay's background music was central to the film's narrative core, its fifth dimension, along with Thakur, Gabbar, Viru, and Jay. When Thakur's family is wiped off by Gabbar, the massacre by Henry Fonda in the Sergio Leone's Once Upon a Time in the West, the only sounds heard are gunshots punctuated by the languid hooves of a horse slowly trotting down the hill and the elaborate creaking of a lawn swing. The scene is not so much about action as it is about the terror. During Jay's funeral, one only hears the crackling of dry firewood and the harmonica. In the famous Kitne Aadmi The, the scene in which Gabbar torments his failed main over a game of a Russian roulette before shooting them, the singular Banshee wail created by a combination of the organ by Kiersey Lord, the cello by Basu Chakrabarti, and indigenously designed hydrophone and pre-recorded tape loop stands out. The Gabbar theme plays when Thakur is confronted by the dead bodies of his family, followed by the violin ensemble, which highlights the Thakur's blind rush into the ravines to seek Gabbar. The violins that had risen to the crescendo stop abruptly as the dacoits capture Thakur and tie him up, his arms outstretched. The synthesized piece of music, double paced, creeps in again. With the Banshee wail in background, Gabbar approaches Thakur, and then a scream. Cut to the present as an involuntary squeal escapes Thakur's throat and his shawl falls off with the empty sleeves of his kurta flapping in the wind. All that is allowed here is a gentle whistling of the wind in the background, which becomes slightly louder to underline the shock of this unbelievable cruelty. In the final scene, in which Viru is ordered to hand over the quarry to Thakur, the leitmotif against creates the eerie feeling. In the scene where Basanti is chased by dacoits, Pancham opts for the rather unusual tabla for the background rather than the violins or accordion that one is used to hearing in such sequences. In an interview published after Pancham's death in the film magazine Movie in February 1994, Ramesh Sippi said, Pancham came up with some innovative ideas for Shole's background music. I remember one particular score that he gave for the buggy chase scene in the film. He used only a tabla, a dholak, and a ghungru coupled with horse hooves. It was very simple, but it gave a tremendous effect to the whole sequence. It is a widespread misconception that Pandit Samta Prasad was the sole tabla player during the sequence. Kesri Lord clarifies, film music is light music and it is mostly about adaptation. Pandit Samta Prasad was an expert tabla player, but his domain was classical and not light music. It was Maruti Rao Keer on a second tabla giving the theka, guiding Panditji to play the piece that was defined Hema Malini's flight for life. During the night, when the village is asleep, a solitary man sitting on the steps of Thakur's courtyard shares his solitude with his mouth organ, while a young widow turns off the kerosene lamps on the balcony one by one as she prepares to turn in for the night. The uncomplicated strains of the instrument weave a bond between the two characters, a nomadic thief and a young woman whose dream died one horrific afternoon. The basic tune was probably suggested by Basu Chakravarti. Amitabh was to play it on screen, says Bhanu Gupta, who played the harmonica. On observing the actor's obvious non synchronous lip movement with the actual notes, director Ramesh Sippi, a stickler for detail, preferred to shoot Amitabh's profile, returning the impression that it was Amitabh actually playing the instrument. He continues, once I had come to Bombay for some important work and was driving fast when a traffic policeman stopped me and asked for my license. I thought it would be futile to argue with him, and so I just told him that I was a musician and I was going for a recording. The policeman was not moved, and so I asked him if he had heard the harmonica piece in the film Sholay, stating that it was I who had played it. I was let off immediately. Pancham's restraint throughout Sholay in delivering just as much as the screenplay needed was his strength. Vibrant guitar chords, the French horn, and percussion, including a tabla tarang, accentuate the two horsemen's ride from the railway station towards Ramgarh in the opening scene. As they canter past open fields and villages and through the swaying greenery, the chords and the beat of the music alter accordingly to a very foxy and rustic tone, ending with Dakshina Mohan Tagore's Tar Shehnai before it cuts back to the initial chords of the acoustic guitar and the French horn in the final lap as the horsemen reach their destination at Thakur Baldev Singh's bungalow. There is a certain twang in the acoustic notes that is reminiscent of the Wild West. The hollow sound of the horn is ominous, a sense of the impending war in the gorges of central India. The French horn, nicknamed Jalebi by the sound recordist B.N. Sharma because of its unique shape, has been used sparingly in Hindi movies and never really to this effect. Even today, this coveted road tune continues to be played on popular demand during various stage shows by Manohari Singh, Ramesh Iyer, Kishore Sodha, and team. Shole's title track was recorded at Rajkamal Studios, which had India's first 6-track recording system. After the recording, Kersi wanted to hear it, but recordist Mangesh Desai kept refusing till he played it at the behest of Pancham. It turned out that there was a defect in the recorder and the piece had to be recorded again. Kersey also remembers that he brought the Mini Moog just before the recording of the title track of Sholay around 1973. The title track has also been dubbed in the film at a note higher than what was actually recorded. Bhanu Gupta's statement about the chord confirms this. Pancham had the tune in mind and asked us what chord would it be used to that entire effect could be generated using open strings. Bhupi and I suggested using D. For the recording, R.K. Das, a guitarist who used to play mainly with L.P., also joined us. You can say that it was an 18-string guitar with three of us. In the film, the title track is on D sharp scale. It would not be incorrect to say that many of Pancham's songs are at a higher scale in the film than on the audio format. Variations in the frequency due to power fluctuation plagued recording studios in Bombay, especially Film Center, which was in Tardeo, a residential area. The songs in Sholay were all situational, and except for Mehbooba Mehbooba, all had something to narrate. Ye Dosti was a statement on the male bonding. In Indian society, this expression is common. In the West, this might have been wrongly construed as a gay affair, a licentious relationship between them. Jab Tak Hai Jaan had Hema Malini dancing to save the hero, like in Raj Khosla's Sharif Padmash, where she had to dance to Mohabbat Bazi Jeetegi, composed by Pancham. Koi Hasina Jab Root Jati Hai To, the first song to be approved for the film, had hero wooing and successfully winning the heroine's affections. Holi Ke Din, probably one of the most celebrated Holi songs in Hindi cinema, ends with Gabbar attacking Ramgarh, shaking the villagers out of their celebratory mood. There are elements in the songs that have composer's special touch. Randhir Kapoor recalls, "One day I entered Pancham's house to find him with his assistants blowing air into half-filled beer bottles. For a minute, I thought they had gone loony. When I asked him what he was up to, he replied that he was trying a new sound. That's the sound you hear in the beginning of the song Mehbooba Mehbooba." Basu Chakravarti was responsible for recreating the sound during the recording, and it was accompanied by the madal followed by the rabab with the Urdu dholak as percussion. 38-second long third interlude in Jab Tak Hai Jaan could have been a songlet in its own right, and there is little doubt whether Gugu, the Iranian singer, would really consider the song a plagiarized version of her song Jo Mein. The bonhomie of Ye Dosti sparkles more so since it is also a duet between Manohari Singh's whistling and Bhanu Gupta's harmonica. The song triggered off a series of songs on male bonding in 1970s. Pandit Ajay Chakravarti describes the song as a classic example of how a simple tune can be packaged to run the entire gamut of emotions from the joyous to the deeply poignant. The interlude of Koi Hasina uses the notes Pa, Sa, Komal Re, similar to the first three guitar notes in the prelude of Chingari Koi Bhadke, a similarity that even seasoned listeners fail to observe. It seems that Pancham took a leaf out of Pudowakin's book on cutting and editing in films and positioned the same note pattern in two different tunes, resulting in drastically different interpretations. The final scene at the railway station had the title music being used once more, but the French horn was replaced by Manohari Singh's whistling. For some reason, it sounds very different this time as it stirs up something deep within, opening up a valley of indefinable sadness, making one wonder at the senseless violence, at the pitiable loss that Viru and Thakur had suffered. The train rolls out of the station, bearing Viru and Basanti to some unknown faraway destination, to a new life as the film's credits start to roll across the screen. 35 years after it was released, Sholay remains the most enigmatic action musical ever made in India. The media response to the music of Sholay wasn't flattering to begin with. During this time, Sholay was criticized as a film devoid of good songs, except Mehbooba Mehbooba, which gave R.D. Burman a new identity, that of a lead singer. One possible reason for the cold reception could have been that initially the music album did not disappear from the shelves quickly enough till the dialogue long play records hit the market. This led to conjecture that the music lagged behind the script. Matters worsened when Pancham was labelled as a plagiarist for using the tune of Demis Rousseau's Say You Love Me as the mukda of Mehbooba Mehbooba. As a matter of fact, the tune had been recommended to Pancham by Ramesh Sippy, who had, along with his wife Geeta, heard the song at his brother Ajit's house in London and taken an instant liking for it. One does not expect the public to be privy to such information since it has surfaced after years of research. Unfortunately, at that time, the damage was done and the tag of being plagiarist stuck to Pancham for the rest of his life. If the undeserved flack wasn't bad enough, just a few months after Shole's release, Sachin Dev Burman passed away on 31st of October 1975 after battling coma for months. In an instant, Pancham had lost his father, mentor, and so much more. Pancham completed his father's final rites and then, as the heir to the Burman legacy, picked up the unfinished strings of movie Millie. Sachinda had recorded the tunes for all four songs of the film in a spool and handed those over to me just prior to being hospitalized. Lyricist Yogesh recalls. Pancham helped in getting those songs recorded. Among the four, one song, Dusht Rakshas, was not used. During the recording, a particular assistant was trying to act smart, quoting the absence of a proper beat in "Ae Tum Yaad Mujhe," but Kishore Kumar snubbed him right away. An unjust, unkind joke was circulating in the Bengali circles at that time. It went like this, that S.D. Burman had been so shocked by the loudness of Mehbooba Mehbooba that he suffered a fatal stroke. The truth is that the once disapproving father had come round to admire his son's talent. In an interview given to Shankarlal Bhattacharya in Hindustan Standard on 19 March 1972, when asked about his son, SD had said, "I should not say much about him. It could smack of nepotism. He is imaginative, very creative. He is bent on experimentation, and I believe he has great future." Dada Burman was probably being the good coach, outwardly stern, but deep down proud of his son's success. Indeed, one morning after he came back from a walk, he proudly recounted how bystanders at Juhu had identified him not as S.D. Burman but as R.D. Burman's father. This was when Hare Rama Hare Krishna was playing in town. After composing for 18 films in 1974, Pancham's releases dropped to 11 in year 1975 and to 10 each in 1976 and 1977. Pancham told, "I have had a slack period thrice, first in mid-1960s, then in mid-1970s, and when after Sholay, and everyone was ignoring me. The third period that he does not mention in this quote was in mid to late 1980s. What was the reason? Surely S.D. Burman's death could not have been a valid reason. The post-Sholay world saw consolidations take place all over the industry. The film had set new standards for multi-starrers, the big budget productions which only the big houses could afford. Dharamveer, Manmohan Desai's answer to Sholay, was one such film. As a result, low-budget films were slowly aged out of competition. This was also a period when Amitabh Bachchan ruled the industry like a colossus. India Today carried a cover story about Bachchan's string of successes titled The One-Man Industry. As business savvy as he was talented, Amitabh Bachchan consolidated his position with Prakash Mehra, Manmohan Desai, and Yash Chopra, commanding the fee as high as 25 lakh in 1980. Pancham could not break the grip that Kalyanji Anandji, Lakshmikant Pyarelal, or even Khayyam had on these producers' clubs. This denied him the opportunity to be part of a commercial masala films that benefited from the brand image of their stars and the publicity machinery of their producer-directors who at times averaged more than one film per year. Call it carelessness, call it boredom, call it a straight strategic move, Pancham became reluctant to accept offers from directors whose films had not done well in the past and gradually began palming off such offers to his assistants or suggesting fresh names to unsuccessful directors who approached him. In the process, he ended up distancing himself from old friends like Mahmood, whom he had pestered for an opportunity years ago. In an interview published in February 1994 issue of the movie, Mahmood said, "Nasir Hussain ne meri puri team le li. Nasir Hussain took away my entire team And Nasir was a bigger producer than me and सब उसके सामने झुक जाते थे. People bowed before Nasir, who was a bigger producer. When I would call Pancham or Suresh Bhatt, dance director, they would not come on the line. In mid 1970s, I took Rahul's assistants, Basu and Manohari, as my music directors for Sabse Bada Rupaiya film in 1976. Then no contact with Pancham for the next 12 years till we met last month, and then it was like old times. Despite this physical distancing, Pancham's music, albeit through his assistants, remained very much part of Mahmood's world. He sang the title song of Sabse Bada Rupaiya, Na Biwi, Na Bacha, Na Baap, Bada, Na Maiya, the perfect blues song in the history of Hindi films where all notes corresponded to the hexatonic blues scale. Though Basu Manohari scored the music for Sabse Bada Rupaiya, Pancham's influence was unmistakable, particularly in this stunning composition. Kailash Chopra, Prem Chopra's brother, had produced Nafrat in 1973 with Pancham as the composer. After the film bombed, Kailash Chopra had to make to do with the services of Sapan Chakravarti for the next film Jab Andhera Hota Hai 1974. Pancham joined him once again for the shelved Devdas, but this was possibly due to the influence of Guljar, who had slated to direct the movie. A maverick composer's poorly thought out business strategy and even more ordinary sense of market forces were becoming apparent. He had missed capitalizing on Shole's success, distanced his old alumni, and had lost the toehold among the big boys. Other than Bhupendra, most musicians in Pancham's inner circle, including Pancham himself, lacked the skills to market themselves. To add to their uncertainties was the presence of discomfiting element called Sapan Chakraborty. In an interview with Pawan Chawla, published after Pancham's death in The Independent on 8th of January 1994, Pancham had said, I was at stadium, I think, watching a football match, and I had a transistor with me to follow the commentary. While flipping across stations, I caught a song sung by Kishore Kumar and Asha Bhosle. It was from the film Chhattis Ghante from 1974. I immediately became a fan of Sapan and contacted him. Pancham was at times remiss the facts. He frequently made the errors when talking about his films. Not only had Sapan Chakraborty written the lyrics for Pancham's Puja songs in 1972, his assistants Basu, Manohari and Maruti had worked as assistant music directors in Chhattis Ghante as well as Naya Nasha in 1973, Chakraborty's first film. The Hindi film Geet Kosh Volume 5 mentions him as an assistant as early as Parayadhan 1971. What some of Pancham's associates recollect is his disproportionate patronage of Sapan. He had promoted Sapan to the stature of assistant music director in Zeharila Insan and continued with him in prestigious ventures like Shami Kapoor's Manoranjan and Guljar's Khushbu. His sudden entry into the Pancham's inner circle, which had developed over the years through an unselfish struggle and years of music making by Basu, Manohari, Maruti, Bhanu, Amrut Rao, Devichand, Bhupendra, Homi, Chandrakant, Kancha raised eyebrows. Sapan could market himself well, a trait that Pancham might have found useful given the post-Sholay lull. Flattery came naturally to Sapan, as exhibited in his use of R.D.'s name in the line "रास्ते में R.D. Burman का एक गाना गा रहा था" of the song "एक लड़की ले गई दिल" in Naya Nasha. Many people associated with R.D. have lashed out at Sapan, alleging that he exploited Pancham, taking advantage of his gullibility. Producers Vinod Shah and Harish Shah, together with director cinematographer Ravikant Nagaish, continued their association with Pancham for yet another curry, western come Indianized Bond thriller. The industry had really begun to overdo it, named Kala Sona in 1975, which had Feroz Khan as the beleaguered protagonist trying to pin down the aptly named heroine king Poppy Singh, played by Prem Chopra. Sharing Finsto Denzoppa, Christian Danny by fellow FTIAian Jaya Bhaduri, who had debuted as a singer under Pancham's father, Ye Gulista Hamara, sang for Pancham in duet Sun Sun Kasam Se. Kala Sona's release saw the return of Asha Bhosle's sizzling numbers, which had been missing in 1975. Koi Aaya Aane Bhi De included typical Pancham touches like the sound that accompanies the opening of a door and double track recording with Asha Bhosle's voice superimposed on her own. Ek Baar Jaane Jana, a foxy tune which might have been the inspiration for fusion artist Ananda Shankar for his composition titled Hill Train, was part of a thrilling climax where the heroine bamboozles the villains with her charm to rescue her brother. Part of background music was a flute piece that would later re-emerge in the form of Tum Kya Jano Mohabbat Kya Hai in Hum Kisi Se Kam Nahi. Kala Sona, however amateurish the film, had songs that were built into the script, foxy, part electronic numbers that managed to blend with the mood of the ravines and the patches of greenery masquerading as poppy fields. In a surprise move, Pramod Chakraborty's Warrant, which released the same year as Kala Sona, had no Asha numbers, not even the heroine tries to wriggle out the villain's den. मैं तुमसे मोहब्बत करती हूँ had Lata Mangeshkar doing the honors. For the first time ever, Pancham used Bhangra beat for Ladi Nazariya Ladi, a Lata Kishore duet. For a Devanand and Zinataman starrer, Warrant, like Hirapanna, had few songs, just 4 in all, the most popular of which was Ruk Jana O Jana, a Kishore Kumar solo that also found a place in Vidhu Vinod Chopra's graduation film in FTII, Murder at Monkey Hill in 1976. The title music of Warrant was a synthesized version of the title music of Robert Claus's Enter the Dragon, 1973, a sign that Pancham had either started concentrating less on films he did not perceive as important and borrowed a piece in totality for the background, or had left the task to somebody else. The former is unlikely given Pramod Chakraborty Dev Zinat combination. It is possible that Pancham may not have been involved in the title track of The Warrant. Many a times, producer would insist on a particular tune and it would be recorded from canned music. But letting producers interfere much more than required in the music making process was unpardonable. Small mistakes and carelessness often snowball and lead to disastrous results. Despite ruling Hindi film music world in 1970s, Pancham contrived to sour his own fortune. The background score of Khote Sikke, for example, a concoction of themes from the good, the bad, and the ugly, and for a few dollars more, was a letdown given the fact that Pancham had the best brass band in the business and could have built around the core theme with his own stylization. However, considering that the background of Khote Sikke also had the tune of the song Tum Mile Pyar Se from Firoz Khan's previous hit Aparadh, composed by Kalyanji Anandji, it might have been Khan who was actually calling the shots for the background music. Actor Bishwajit was one of the first-time producers who sought Pancham during 1970s. If his directorial debut Kehte Hai Mujhko Raja had not been a nightmare, Kishore Kumar's comical Bum Bum Check, which Kishore had sung partly as a phrase in the song Duniya Mein Ameeron Ko Aaram Nahi Milta in the film Khaniz in 1949, might have fared better. The Asha Bhosle solo Jia Mein Tufan, the Hindi version of the Bengali hit Pora Banshi Shunle E Mon, was remarkable in its multi-layered configuration with Rekha doing a Jaya Bhaduri in Anamika. The impish Leona Babu Tanik Piona, another of Pancham's convergence, this time from his Bengali hit Mauye Jomeche Aaj Maugo, was construed around a foxy tune and had notes which seemed to clamber over each other. Ritesh Mukherjee, son of singer-composer Hemanta Mukhopadhyay, roping in Pancham for his production Mazak 1975, was interesting as Hemanta himself was a composer of very high repute and was still in demand in his native Kolkata. Mazak had sweet yet saucy Asha Bhosle solo Takra Gaye Do Badal Ambar Pe, where the interludes were in the form of dialogues by lead actor Vinod Mehra. This unconventional stylization might have been Pancham's salute to Hemanta Mukherjee's song Zara Nazron Se Keh Do Ji in Hemanta's home production 20 Saal Baad 1962. Meanwhile, Ranbir Kapoor was not having a great time as a comedy hero. Bappi Soni's Bhanwar, Prakash Mehra's Khalifa, and Ashok Roy's Dhongi turned out to be hit shortcuts on the way downhill, all in the same year. The only thing that tempted people to set forth towards the hall was their music. Mili Bhattacharya recalls, I was humming a number song by Purnadas Ball called Menoka Mathai Dilo Gomta. Pancham inquired whether he could exercise the liberty of remolding it into a Hindi film song. I told him to go ahead. After a few days, when Pancham was in Kolkata, he said, your song has been recorded. I was later made to sever the music of his creation, Hai Re Hai Tera Ghunta, from Dhongi, with its plethora of percussions and very distinctive sounds. With Khalifa, actor turned lyricist Gulshan Bawra, who had replaced Anand Bakshi as the lyricist for the film, joined the Pancham bandwagon. Their relationship would deepen with the time. From the film, Dil Machal Raha Hai became the trademark Pancham song. It was racy, pulsating with emotion, varying in pitch and intonation with the short divisions, and digressing from one pattern to another with a diabolically different antra on a higher octave, all enmeshed in a 4x multiple matra pattern. The teen tal, which is a 16 matra beat, is almost the same as 4 bars of common time in Western music. Kiersey Lord explains. It is also a universal beat. How you play around with the beat is important. It can be 1, 2, 3, 4, repeating itself in cyclic patterns. It can also be 1, gap, 3, 4, and repeat. You can break the pattern into 3 times 4 plus 4, like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. It still adds up to 16, which is nothing but 4 times 4. This is a composer's innovating playpen and a test of his rhythm section. You can create many patterns within the form. Pancham would keep experimenting with various beat divisions within the given framework. 4 bars and you would find Pancham. Narinder Bedi's Mahachor from 1976, which brought Sapan Chakraborty into prominence, was one of the Pancham's lows during this period. Sapan's name appeared as the arranger in the film's publicity booklet, confirmed by Manohari Singh, though it did not feature in the credits. The film also marked the beginning of the rift between Rajesh Khanna and Narinder Bedi. The songs were some of the rare instances where antras, something that RD usually excelled in, sounded dreary and jaded. In Kaka's slide after Namak Haram, at least the songs stood out and were placed on a pedestal they richly deserved. There was nothing to be salvaged about Mahachor. Quick side note, Neetu Singh claimed that Asha Bhosle Anand Bakshi duet in Mahachor, Suno Bato Baat Meri, inspired B.R. Chopra to plan a Punjabi film named Sohni Mahiwal, which was to be produced by Rajesh Khanna. Khayyam was to write the music. The Mahurat was held in Chandigarh, but the project was shelved. Now back on. Along came the life after death tale Mehbooba in 1976, which renewed the combination of Shakti Samanta, Rajesh Khanna, Pancham, Lata Mangeshkar, and of course Kishore Kumar. Here experiments were out. The music was vintage 1971, the year of Kati Patang and Amar Prem, a deep dive into classicality. The tandem Mere Naina Savan Bhado presented Raga Shivaranjani in a manner that was symphonic, haunting, modern, yet traditional to suit the different time periods in which the versions were made. Manohari Singh says of the composition, nobody could use Shivaranjani as evocatively as Pancham did in Mere Naina Savan Bhado. Singh's statement was perhaps based on the observation that raga was used in the traditional mold by the most composers of the day. Though composers Shankar Jaikishan's usage of this raga conquered generation barriers, but unlike Pancham, they were more conventional with even their most well-known Shivaranjani number, Jaane Kahan Gaye Wo Din, Mera Naam Joker 1970, sounding like a semi-classical tune. Incidentally, composer Salil Chaudhary gave raga a twist in the song O Mere Saathi Re, composed in 1980 for Aakhri Badla 1989, where, despite the melody sticking to the norms of the raga, the arrangement was chord-based. Mere Naina Sawan Bhado was recorded by Lata Mangeshkar first and then by Kishore Kumar, who was given Lata's recorded version to work upon. Initially, Kishore Das said that this was beyond him and that he could not sing this number. Pancham said in an interview, I persuaded him saying, "What are you saying? Where can I go looking for another singer just for this number?" He relented, suggesting that I record Lata version first. He then listened to Lata's version for at least 7 days, a tribute to his sincerity. When the final recorded version emerged, it did not sound as if it was memorized at all. It sounded very original. Kishore Kumar, in an interview with Pritish Nandi in the Illustrated Weekly of India in 1985, after having received Lata Mangeshkar Award from Madhya Pradesh government, cited Mere Naina as one of his top 10 favorite songs. This was the second Pancham nugget after Chingari Koi Bhadke that featured in Kishore's list. Gori Tori Painjaniya was based on a mix of ragas like Khamod, Malhar, Vrindavani, Sarang, and set to Adhatal, played on tabla by Amrut Rao Katkar and Maruti Rao Khir. The semi-classical song is also notable for its use of instruments which vary from pakhwaj to the veena, from violin to the Bengal drum. Manna Dey relished this number immensely, not only because of its strong base in classical music but also for its presentation in the shorter format of the film song. Quick side note, curiously, at the time of movie's release, Kishore Kumar told his son Amit Kumar, Mere Naina is fine, but look at the compositional elegance of Janeman Janeman. LP have done a brilliant job there. Now, back on. Singer Shujo Bhattacharya, who sang for Pancham in the film Purushottam 1993, was present at the recording of Gori Tori Painjaniya, and he recalls Manna Dey's presence in the recording studio would normally create an ambience of a military base camp. An emotional man with a tough exterior, he had great respect for Pancham. During the song rehearsals, Pancham was laying out phrases for Manna Babu and asking him to choose the ones he liked and to apply his classical erudition to embellish the phrases. Manna Dey, on the contrary, was telling Pancham, Pancham, it is your song, you decide what should be done. The mutual respect which was evident during their interaction was remarkable. Another vital input to the song was from Gopi Krishna, the dance director who was finalizing the tal. It was essential for visualizing the dance sequence for Hema Malini. Aapke Sheher Mein is a Lata Mangeshkar solo that deserved more acclaim. In an innovative Mukhda Antara arrangement, Pancham keeps listeners wondering where the song really begins. It starts off with the sher Aapke Sheher Mein gets into the meter at Ke Jashn-e-Shadi Hai and rises to the mental agony of the dancer, falls and winds itself mysteriously with Main Tawayaf Ho Mujra Karungi, another instance where Pancham rejects convention while using Rag Bhairavi. The film also had a song based on Rag Marubihag, Jamuna Kinare Aja, a Lata Mangeshkar solo, which was left out of the final version of the film. The breezy, light and easy Lata solo, Chalori and Lata Kishore duet, Parbat Ke Piche, provided a contrast to the classical tunes in Mehbooba. For its exceptional music, Mehbooba should have done much better at the box office. An overweight Rajesh Khanna and an equally flabby Hema Malini helped nobody's cause. Even a reincarnation failed to cure Kaka of his wooden expression and Hema Malini of her grunts. In an interview given to Shonali Shabarwal in the Times of India, Bombay, November 9th, 89, Pancham mused, "What I have never understood is why a good score in a bad film is forgotten. Before Mehbooba was released, its songs were a craze. Once it flopped, it was out of sight, out of mind." In another interview to Sanjeev Verma in the Screen Observer on 31st of May 92, he said, "Of my songs, the one which remains a favorite for the way it was conceived and executed is Mere Naina Sawan Bhado. People laughed at the film, but I was thrilled with the song." In an informal discussion in the Tolly Club, Kolkata in 2001, Shakti Samanta differed. Reincarnation stories generally run in our country. Look at Madhumati. I realize that Mehbooba did not run, but I do not feel the songs were picturized badly. As much as I agree that the songs of Mehbooba were brilliant, only audience know the chemistry of a hit or a flop. There can be no set formula. I can give you many examples from big houses where two films with almost the same storyline met with drastically different results at the box office. Pancham's woos were multiplied further during the making of Mehbooba. He had one of his innumerable childish quarrels with Kaka. However, this time, this squabble did not end in a Bharat Milap, a term coined by common friends to notify a session that usually went high on scotch and after which the two stars generally made up. Samantha failed to bridge the growing gap between his two cornerstones and in walked Lakshmikant Parallel for his next film with Rajesh Khanna, Anurodh. The year was 1977. Pancham lost Samantha household for a brief period, but clinging to an overdrawn Kaka turned out to be Samantha's critical error in the judgment. Vijay Anand's Bullet in year 1976 followed closely on the heels of Ishq 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 as Pancham's next album for Anand Brothers. Incidentally, Bullet was produced by Vijay Anand under the banner Nauketan Productions and was supposed to be a celebration of Nauketan's 25 years. Despite a slick script closely echoing James Hadley Chase's Just Another Sucker, Bullet misfired. Signs of Dev's eroding image perhaps, as the film had polish, Vijay Anand's trademark tribute to Hitchcockian elements, and some funky music. In this crime thriller, where police officer Devanand, instead of scribe Harry Barber in the novel, appearing under his real name Dharam Dev, is framed by swindler Kabir Bedi, a Pancham's background score was expectedly sharp, especially in Dev Kabir confrontation scenes. Given the genre, the songs had a secondary role to play in the film. This was also the first color flick from Nauketan without a romantic duet. Lata Mangeshkar was fascinating in her rendition of the effervescent yet touching Jab Tum Chale Jaoge, the only song that talked about romance, while Kishore Kumar deftly negotiated the notes of the theme song Bullet Bullet, the picturization of which also brought Dev in contact with his heroine to be Tina Munim. Two other songs are worth mention as they reveal Pancham's penchant for experimenting with sound. Pine Ke Baad, with its one-off scale change using woodwind, the staccato brass fillers, the continuing guitar strum, and occasional offbeat rhythm, replicates the psychedelic, near surreal feel of a nightclub come marijuana den. Chori Chori Chupke Chupke, the Kishore Asha duet, was the most popular song in the film. Its intoxicating and well-mixed dose of warbling, laughter, deliberate drawls, bossa nova, staggered rhythms, electronic sounds, eerie sax fillers, etc. brings forth image of spinning rooms, blurred night lights, empty roads, and the stars close enough to clutch the inky sky flirting with the pale moon. A who is that man following me? Irenaeus, the cold comfort of a lamp post at the street corner. This was Nirvana in Pancham style.